What's up, family? And welcome back to another week on Guns and Butter with your favorite cousin, Kinda G. So, this week at the dinner table, we're going to be covering another case that I got from Text Me When You Get Home. Again, shout out to my sister. She put me onto it. So, before we get into the case, let me give y'all a quick backstory. So, in 2017, little old me, I had graduated from college and I moved out to Dallas. Now, I got my first job working as a phlebotomist at this plasma center. That shit was so ghetto, but I just knew I was a shit, okay? So while I'm watching this episode of Text Me When You Get Home, of course it shows pictures of the victim's family. So they show a picture of the victim's daughters. And I'm like, I know her. I used to work with one of her daughters at the plasma center. And as I'm watching the episode, the longer I'm watching it, my heart just breaks over and over again because I just never knew that she had gone through something like this. And that's one of the reasons why I do cases like this, because it invokes so much emotion and I'm able to really give it my all. But this case really touched me because I knew the victim's daughter personally, so this one just hit different. But every time I would see her daughter at work, she always had a smile on her face. She always looked confident. She was cool. Her skin was glistening. Like, you would just never know that she had gone through a traumatic experience like this only a couple years before I had met her. And I just never imagined that she had gone through something as tragic as losing her mom at such a young age. But like I said, this case really touched me. I actually went as far as to reach out to her on Facebook and ask her for her blessing to do this case. So I really do hope I do this one justice. Before we get started, I do want to give y'all a disclaimer. I am using actual audio from the real case, and it can be very triggering, so just be aware. Now, with that being said, let's dive right into it.
That's what it's all about. Guns and butter, baby.
So this week at the dinner table, I'll be telling y'all about the murder of 32-year-old Deanna Antoinette Cook. So Deanna was born June 19th, 1980 in Dallas, Texas, South Dallas to be exact, Oak Cliff. And she was the oldest daughter to her mother, Vicky Cook, and father, Mark Thompson. And she had three sisters, Carlitha Cook, Valencia Battle, and Davia Perry. Now, Deanna was known to be very wild. She loved to dance. She loved to play pranks on her younger sisters. And she was said to be the foundation and the strength of the Cook family. Now, growing up, Deanna was gorgeous. She had that cocoa butter brown skin. She was tall and slim, just had that athletic type of build. Now, in high school, she attended South Oak Cliff High School. And this girl was a runner. She's a track star. She was fast as hell, y'all. She was out there breaking records in all the sprints and all the relay races. But at the tender age of 16, her dreams of becoming a track star were cut short when she got pregnant with her first daughter, Anicia Williams. And she gave birth to her in March of 1997. And just 2 short years later, Deanna gave birth to her second daughter, Anaya Williams, and she was born in November of 1998. But at only 18, Deanna found herself a single mother to her 2 daughters. But she didn't give up on love. Now, I'm not exactly sure who she married first and when they got married, but she got married to her first husband. The marriage didn't last very long and it ended pretty amicably. But on June 4th, 2008, she got married for the second time. Now, this marriage lasted about 4 years before Deanna couldn't take it anymore and divorced him. And even though she had 2 failed marriages, that's okay. Her main priority was making sure that her 2 daughters were taken care of, and that's exactly what she did. But she loved writing and journaling, and she was actually in the process of writing a book. So not only was she an aspiring author, but she also dabbled in modeling from time to time. But she met no strangers. She was vibrant, the life of the party, and she did everything she could to make sure her daughters had a childhood that was enjoyable and safe. And because the age gap between her and her daughters wasn't super big, they got along like best friends. So because she gave birth to Nisi and Anaya at such a young age, the 3 of them were all really growing up together. And growing up in Deanna's home, There was not an animal that she did not enjoy having around. She had dogs, cats, fish, turtles. She just loved animals. And not only was she super close with her two daughters, she was really close with her mom, Vicky. And they spoke every single day. They texted, they called. Without a question, they was on that phone talking to each other several times a day. Now, this is 2012. And this is about the time when Facebook and Twitter started to really take off. Well, I'll definitely say Twitter. And Deanna was one of those people who was on that Twitter wave. So she was tweeting and posting on Facebook almost every single day. One of her tweets reads, quote, "Headed to work for another moneyful day. Be blessed," end quote. But like I said, she posted very often, and she was definitely going to let you know what was on her mind. Now, as I mentioned before, Deanna was the life of the party, and she loved to party. But when she would be on the club scene partying, she would meet these bottom of the barrel ass niggas and just be so attracted to them. Now, my sources say that Deanna had a long history of drug abuse. She gonna smoke her little weed, she gonna have her little drink, but her real drug of choice was that PCP, that wet. Now, although Deanna had a long uphill battle with drugs, by the summer of 2012, she was on the road to putting the pieces of her life back together. She started to refocus her attention on building a bright future for her and her girls again. She even started going to church. And for the first time in a long time, Deanna was happy, and so were her daughters. She even went out and started working at a car auction company, and she was really starting to boss up on a bitch. She went out and bought a nice little house for the girls. It had a garage, it had a pool in the back, everybody had their own rooms, and she was really starting to grow and blossom into the mother that she needed to be for her daughters. On August 16th, Deanna wakes up. It's around 7:33 a.m. and she tweets, quote, "Morning world, headed to work, hoping when I get off my house won't be broke in. I got a stalker," end quote. So at the time that Deanna tweeted this, nobody in her immediate family had Twitter. You know, her daughters are pretty young. Her mom is older. Of course, she's not going to be on Twitter. So nobody in her immediate family seen this post. Now, even though nobody has seen this tweet, at the moment, all is well. Deanna goes to work, she comes home, and her daughters are staying with an aunt at the moment. Before the night ends, she's on the phone talking to 13-year-old Anaya. And she's on the phone letting Anaya know how much she loves her and Nisi and how everything she's doing is for the both of them. She got this house for them. She letting her know, look, mama got y'all, okay? They end the call, and even at the age of 13, this goodbye just did not feel right to Anaya. The following morning at around 6:30 a.m., Deanna joins her mom on a phone prayer group. They pray, and by the end of the call, Deanna's like, "Bye, mama," and Vicky's like, "Bye, Deanna." And again, this is the second goodbye that just did not feel right. Vicky says that usually when she gets off the phone or when she says goodbye, she says, "See you later," or, "See you soon," whatever. And this was the first time that she said, "Bye." So the prayer phone call was around 6:30 a.m. And even though Deanna and her mom had spoken briefly on the call, she still would call her mom every single day at 10 o'clock. But on this day, her mom did not hear from her at 10 o'clock. And she's like, "I know we spoke briefly earlier, but girl, you better call me." So 10 o'clock came and went. And Vicky's like, "I don't know, maybe she got busy." So she's like, "Let me call and see where this girl is." So she starts calling, she starts texting, and she's getting no response. So she leaving her voicemails, and you know how grandmas is when they leave voicemails. They be like, "Hey, this your mama," like we don't know who it is. So she like, "Deanna, this your mama, call me back." And she ain't getting nothing back in return from Deanna. And of course, she wasn't the only one looking for her. Nisi and Anaya was looking for her as well. They was waiting for her to drop off some money so that they can get their hair done for school. So they start blowing her phone up. They texting her back to back. "Hey mom, answer the phone please. Where you at? You still coming over?" But she's not responding to her daughters either. Now, Deanna wasn't the mama who was going to tell you she was going to do something and then doesn't come through for you. If she said she was going to do something, she was going to do it. So the fact that she said she was going to drop off some money so that they can get their hair done and never came through, they're starting to worry about their mom. So it's now August 18th, and Vicky still hadn't heard anything from Deanna, and her mother's intuition had started to kick in, and she knew something wasn't right. But all at the same time, she didn't want to think the worst. So although everybody was worried about Deanna, nobody had gone by her house to check on her. So it's not like nobody wanted to go and check on her, because 13-year-old Anaya did not play about her mama. And the fact that she wasn't answering any of her calls and texts, and here it was going on 24 hours and nobody had heard from her. She was so worried, she was anxious. She just needed to see with her own two eyes that her mom was okay. So by day 2, Vicky is like, if she don't bring her tail to church tomorrow, we gonna go by the house and see about her. Man, tomorrow couldn't come fast enough for Anaya. So Sunday, when they get to church, Deanna isn't there. So they're like, we're not about to wait till the end of service. They end up cutting out of church early. And as soon as they're about to head over to Deanna's house, Vicky remembers that she has to pick up Deanna's younger sister, Carlita, from the airport. So they have to make a quick stop at the airport to pick her up. Man, Anaya's in the backseat like, come on, auntie. They pick her up from the airport, and by the time they get over to Deanna's house, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. So as soon as everybody gets out the car, it's not hard to miss. There's a stream of water coming out the garage. And on top of that, Deanna's 2 chihuahuas are out in the front yard running loose. And they're like, what is going on right now? So they go to the front door. It's locked. Nobody has a key to get in. So they go around to the back, and of course the back door is locked as well. But as soon as they step foot on the back porch, the doormat is soaked. So from the back window, Carlita looks inside the house, and she can see the entire floor is covered with water. So they'd been there for no more than 15 minutes. At 1:44, Vicky calls 911 because she's like, we got to get into this house. We got to figure out what's going on with Deanna, why it's flooded. Her dogs are out here. Something's not right. So she calls the police.
Dallas 911 Grand, what's your emergency?
My daughter has been missing since Friday.
How old is your daughter?
She is 32.
Call all the jails and hospitals?
No, I have not. Ma'am, can you just send the police over here?
No, ma'am. You have to do this first. We were out there.
What was it out here for?
We were out there. I don't know what they came out there for, but we came out there.
On the 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was just a couple of days ago. And Deanna's been missing since the 17th.
Do you think it's foul play? Do you think somebody did something to her?
Yes, I do.
You are refusing to call the jail?
No, I'm not refusing, ma'am. I just wanted some officers here to help us get in this house.
Police can't help you get in the house.
Like, girl, did you just tell me, no, ma'am, you can't send police over when I'm telling you there's an emergency? Who the fuck you think you are? So at this point, Carlita's like, Mom, hang up the phone. She turns around and she gives the door 3 good kicks. And on the 3rd kick, the door flings open. Y'all, as soon as the door opened, they all caught a whiff of that fragrant scent. Now, right off the bat, none of them really recognized the scent that they were smelling. But they did notice that they were walking through water up to their ankles. So they enter in through the back door and they have to go through the kitchen. So they walk through the kitchen and into the living room. And at the time, the only people that had gone through the back door was Vicky, Anaya, and Carlita. Niecy was still waiting around front. So she waited for her Aunt Carlita to let her in. So once she's inside, they all start heading towards Deanna's room. When they get to Deanna's room door, the door is kind of pulled closed. So Vicky slightly pushes on the door, and when she pushes on the door, it just falls off the hinges and opens. As soon as the door is open, they see that Deanna's room looks like a tornado hit it. The place is in shambles. The rest of the house is still intact, but her room is toe up. Her mattress was off-centered with the bed. Picture frames are knocked off the walls. CDs are all over the floor. The lamp was knocked over. There's broken stuff all over the floor. I mean, it was a mess. It really did look like a fight took place in this room. So the 4 of them step over and walk through all of the stuff that's laying on Deanna's floor. And now they've made it to Deanna's bathroom door. And this door is closed as well. So again, Vicky pushes the door open slowly. And as soon as the door is open, she just falls back and starts hollering. So against Carlita's suggestion, Vicky had actually stayed on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, even though she had refused to send first responding officers out to Deanna's house when her mother had initially called and requested to have an officer come out to the house. But at this point, it was too late, and the damage was already done. Deanna's mother, her younger sister, and both of her children had just discovered Deanna's decomposing body. She was floating face down in the bathtub. Her feet were hanging off the side of the tub, and the water was still running full blast. So having her family find her like this was the worst possible scenario. After being in a tub full of water for 2 days, all the skin on Deanna's face was gone, and her body was completely bloated. After Nisi and Anaya found their mom in the tub like this, they just stood over her body and stared at her. They didn't know what to do. And the fact that her family had to find her like this was beyond disappointing. Because where were the responding officers? Where was her help? And why did the operator think it was okay to tell Vicky, no, we're not going to send nobody out there? We already sent people out there a couple days ago. Like, bitch, okay, well, I'm asking you to send somebody out now. Who the fuck are you to tell me no? You need to call the jails and hospitals first. I ain't never heard no shit like that before. So when the cops finally get there, they're getting everybody's statements, and the investigators can tell that Deanna had been there for a couple days. But due to the amount of decomposition that had taken place in just a short amount of time, it was really hard to determine the cause of death. There was no noticeable bruising or injuries that they can see right off the bat. And because of that, her death wasn't initially ruled a homicide. But let me tell you, as the family is giving their statements, Deanna's mom, Vicky, knew exactly who did this to her daughter. So detectives took note of what the family told them about Deanna and her relationships, and the investigators wanted to get a closer look into her background. So they did know that she had 2 failed marriages, and the first one ended pretty mutually. It was the second one that was so far from the opposite of the way the first one ended that got the detectives thinking. Now, in her second marriage, Deanna was married to a very abusive and violent man, and his name was Delvecchio Patrick. Now, none of the family liked him, including Deanna's 2 daughters and her mom, and Delvecchio knew it. He felt it, he seen it, he heard it, but he didn't give no fucks. But all of Deanna's family was like, she grown, she gonna do what she wanna do regardless of what we tell her, and they let her do her. So in 2008, against everybody's better judgment, Deanna decided to marry Delvecchio. Now, instead of this union being exciting and joyous, it was very volatile and destructive. And Delvecchio's ugly wormhead ass was beyond toxic and controlling. In fact, one of Deanna's best friends named Shamira Ingram comes forward and describes a first-hand experience of how violent Delvecchio really was towards Deanna. Now, she recalls a night on January 3rd, 2009. She says she was over at Deanna's house watching the girls. They were in the back room asleep, and she was in the living room watching TV. So Deanna's getting dressed to go out and hit the club with a couple of other homegirls. And the next thing Shamira remembers is Delvecchio busting through the door and throwing Deanna up against the wall. He threatened her with a knife and started beating the life out of her. Shamira's trying to get him off of her, and he looks up at her with bloodshot eyes and says, "Bitch, if you don't get your ass out of here, I'ma beat your ass like her." So Shamira's like, "Look, I don't want no problems," and she falls back. She walks into the next room and goes to call 911. Now, when the cops arrive, Delvecchio was still beating Deanna. His ass was in such a rage that in order for the cops to get him off of her, they had to tase him. So, of course, Delvecchio was taken to jail. But even after this incident, along with many others, Deanna tried to protect herself. And after this incident, she requested a protective order against Delvecchio's crazy ass. To give y'all another example of Delvecchio being violent towards Deanna, on March 20th, 2010, Deanna and Delvecchio are out at a club. She's having fun, enjoying herself, dancing. And right in the middle of the club, out of nowhere, this motherfucker hits her. Now, afterwards, they left the club separately. But by the time Deanna got home, he was already in her house, hiding in her closet. And as soon as she got close enough, he jumped out and started beating her. He attacked her and he strangled her until she passed out. And when she woke up, she was wearing nothing but a bra and underwear. She fought her way out of her house, and still in her bra and underwear, she ran next door to her neighbor's house to call the cops. After this attack, Deanna was done with Delvecchio. She had enough of his shit, and she finally filed for divorce. Combined with all of this evidence that they just found out about how violent Delvecchio was, and the tweet Deanna made about having a stalker the day before she was killed, turns out the stalker was Delvecchio. And not only did she tweet about it, but she also called the cops to report it.
911, this is Pat. What's your emergency? I have a stalker. He's been out here in his house son all day long. He's been out here across the street watching my house. I don't know what his plan is. You can look up my name. You can see it's 100,000, 1,000 complaints. But ain't nobody doing nothing.
So if you heard, she said, if you look up my name, you can see about 1,000 complaints and nobody's doing nothing. Why is that, Dallas PD? Why are y'all not doing nothing? And y'all, the evidence against him is just stacking up. In addition to Deanna calling the cops on him that morning, a mail carrier by the name of Debbie Lawson comes forward and tells the police that same morning at around 10:40 a.m., she seen Deanna outside of her house arguing with a man who she later identified as Delvecchio. She says that she seen the both of them walking towards Deanna's house. Deanna was carrying some bags and they were walking pretty intentionally towards her house. So armed with all this evidence stacked up against Delvecchio's tackhead ass, the Dallas PD hit the streets hard looking for him. And within about 2 hours, they ended up tracking him down at his stepdaddy's house. Of course, he acted like he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He denied having anything to do with Deanna's murder, but they arrested him on outstanding warrants and they took him into custody. So they bring him down to the station so he can be questioned. But down at the station, one of the officers pulls Carlitha to the side, and he tells her that the Dallas PD fucked up. He says, something is about to come out, and when it comes out, I need to make sure that you guys are going to be able to move responsibly. And Carlitha's like, move responsibly? What is you talking about? The officer then suggests that she and the family do more research into Deanna's 911 call. And the 911 call that he's referring to is not the one that Deanna placed the morning that she died, talking about having a stalker. He's referring to the 911 call that captured Deanna's entire murder. So the very next day on August 20th, the press gets a hold of all of this information about Deanna's 911 call. So it's hitting the airway that Deanna called 911 at 10:52 a.m. on August 17th. Fucked up was an understatement. The Dallas PD failed Deanna so fucking bad on multiple occasions. And believe it or not, this call went on for 17 minutes. If you listen closely, you can hear her gurgling on the water. You can hear her gasping. You can hear his voice saying, "Get the fuck down." You can hear her saying his name. She's calling him Del Vecchio. She's calling him Red. She's calling him baby. She's trying to do whatever she can to calm him down. And I know good and well there's a way for police and dispatchers to know the exact location of where a call is coming from. And she's steady sitting on the phone asking her, "What's the address, ma'am?" In fact, one of my sources actually said that this operator knew the exact block that Deanna was calling from and possibly her exact address. And yet she still chose to sit on the phone for 17 minutes listening to Deanna scream bloody murder. And in addition to that, none of the key details or the fact that a woman was being attacked was reported to the responding officers. So, en route to Deanna's house, the responding officers stopped twice. Once for a false burglar alarm, and again at the 7-Eleven to grab them some snacks. So they ended up arriving at Deanna's house 50 minutes after she called 911. And wait, y'all, there's more. To dig them a deeper hole, not only did they move with no sense of urgency, but when they got to Deanna's house, they rang the doorbell. Of course, nobody came to the door. So they walked the perimeter of the residence. There seemed to be no sign of a disturbance. They also called Deanna's phone back, but it went straight to voicemail. Now, the officers didn't believe that there was any justification to kick the door down because in the report, it had been of a disturbance and not of an actual offense. So they leave. After finding out all this shit that the Dallas PD could have done and didn't, the family was pissed. And the dispatcher's raggedy ass had the nerve to say that she didn't hear Deanna being choked or Del Vecchio threatening to kill her. Bullshit. I'll give you a half a point for that excuse. Because, granted, you couldn't hear her gurgling on the water or Del Vecchio saying he was going to kill her until you played the audio back and listened more closely. But I know good and well you heard her screaming for him to stop. You heard her screaming help. And you still sat on the phone for 17 minutes and 21 seconds to be exact. So the operator that took Deanna's call during the attack, she was suspended. And the rude-ass operator that took Vicky's call the day they were trying to get into Deanna's house when she was discovered, that ass was fired. And the community was outraged by the lack of accountability the department was taking when dealing with Deanna's case. There was actually a whole movement in Dallas with women wearing purple tape over their mouths. They were doing marches and posting on social media with the hashtag #IamDeanna's And this is the type of stuff that invokes so much anger and so much emotion in me while I'm doing these cases. Because if you think about it, in every single last one of the cases that I've discussed here, all of the victims had family members that loved them, that cherished them, and they're truly missed. And the people that killed them gave no fucks about the people that they were leaving behind. The mayor of Dallas at the time, Mike Rawlings, actually came forward and launched a citywide campaign against domestic violence. And even after Dallas PD admitted to failing Deanna, they were still doing nothing to help the Cook family. But they did go ahead and charge Del Vecchio's broke, dusty, snag-a-tooth, stank booty, earthworm head ass with first-degree murder for drowning Deanna. So his trial begins on May 18th, 2015. And we already know that during the trial, that's when all this newfound evidence is brought into discovery. And in this case, the defense was trying to bring forth every piece of evidence that they could to discredit Deanna and make it seem as if she was the aggressor and Del Vecchio was defending himself against her. So to kick the trial off, District Attorney Bree West wanted to get in front of a few things concerning Deanna's criminal record and her use of drugs and alcohol, specifically PCP, before the defense had the opportunity to. So the DA starts off by addressing how Deanna had been arrested for assaulting Del Vecchio in the past. Okay, so y'all remember the night Deanna ran to her neighbor's house in her bra and underwear? So this same night, he ran his broke ass to the La Quinta Motel and had the front office attendant call the police. Now, when the responding officer gets there, he tells him that Deanna attacked him. So the officer does a quick examination, and he sees that Del Vecchio has a stab wound on one of his shoulders. He has some small wounds on his mouth and left forearm, as well as a laceration on his tongue and some scratches on his face. So when the officers get over to Deanna's house, it's all fucked up. But she tells him that Del Vecchio is the one that attacked her. But because they don't see any signs of injuries on her, she was seen as the aggressor in this situation, so they took her to jail. Now, instead of letting the defense use this information in their favor, the prosecution wanted to be the one to let the jury know that, yes, this incident did take place and Deanna was arrested for it, but the cold-blooded murder that he's on trial for right now is absolutely not the same situation. He's the violent aggressor who stalked Deanna, having her fear for her safety. He was the aggressor. He was violent, not her. And the prosecution wanted to make damn sure that the jury knew who they were dealing with. They let the jury know that at the time of Deanna's death, Del Vecchio was staying with his stepdad on Mohawk Drive in Blake Springs, Texas. And in the hours leading up to Deanna's death, the landline at his stepdaddy's house called Deanna's cell phone 164 times. The prosecution also used Del Vecchio's jail phone calls as evidence as well. In a phone call made to one of his family members while he's sitting in jail awaiting trial, he's sitting up on this phone talking cash money shit. He like, quote, 9 times out of 10, if they say I done whipped their ass, 9 times out of 10, you know what I done to them. 9 times out of 10, I'd have to wrestle their ass down real hard. When I get into it with a girl, I wrestle her ass down. End quote. And during this 4-day trial, Deanna's 911 call was played over and over and over again. Having to relive this horrendous moment all over again, Deanna's mom, Vicky, had to take the stand and describe just how violent and evil Del Vecchio was to her firstborn child. So let's not forget that on the 911 recording, Deanna is begging a man. You can hear a man's voice in the background that she's addressing as Red and Del Vecchio and Baby. She's saying, please stop. She says, why are you doing this to me? Please, Del Vecchio, please. I'm not doing anything. Baby, please. And even with all of this evidence stacked up against Del Vecchio, his defense still wanted to put up a fight. The defense had the nerve to argue that because Deanna used PCP, and one of the main side effects of PCP use is hallucinations and delusions. They argue that because she was a user, this attack had been nothing more than a hallucination. A hallucination? It's the lengths these defense lawyers go to defend these guilty-ass clients. The defense also tried to paint the picture that because Deanna was a drug user, she suffered from mental disorders and was prone to violence. They were literally reaching. Because you heard the fucking tape too, defense lawyer. Get a grip. Snap out of it. So a forensic pathologist by the name of Christy Compton testified that Deanna was bipolar and suffered from schizophrenia and mood disorders. So combined with the fact that she had mental disorders, allegedly, and she was a PCP user, all of that factored into the defense's argument that this whole attack was a hallucination. During testimony, Dr. Compton was asked if she heard any water splashing during the 911 tape. And she says, quote, I could not detect any water splashing, but I think what I detected was a faucet and water running, end quote. She's then asked, if a person were actually experiencing a drowning by water, would you not expect to hear water splashing? And she says, I would expect so. And even though Dr. Compton said that Deanna had suffered from mental disorders, she did say, though, after she reviewed the 911 report, she did not think that this was a delusion or any hallucinations. And after both sides rested, it took a jury only 3 hours and 20 minutes to deliberate. And on May 22nd, 2015, they found Del Vecchio Patrick's ugly ass guilty of first-degree murder by homicidal violence, including drowning, and they sentenced him to 85 years with the possibility of parole. Like, what the fuck? With the possibility of parole? Really? So he'll be eligible for parole in 2042 when he'll be 69 years old. So after Deanna's passing, the Dallas Police Department actually took accountability and they changed their entire way that they deal with domestic violence 911 calls. They actually use Deanna's recording as a teaching tool when they're doing their trainings as what not to do. Also, if they do receive domestic violence 911 calls, the responding officers are trained to knock the door down if nobody responds when they get there. Now, Deanna's family does work within the community in Dallas, and they started a foundation called Deanna's Voice. With this foundation, they're able to help domestic violence victims. All right, family, that brings us to the end of this week's case on the murder of 32-year-old Deanna Cook. As always, I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you back here next week, same place, same time.